Welcome back. Chapter 16, Simon. Holy fuck. Watching Charlie rock against me to get herself off was one of the sexiest things I've ever seen. So damn sexy that I thought my dick might bust right through my zipper of my jeans. I had to try to think of something else, anything but the fact that she had another piercing that I was dying to see. When she slumped against me for the second time, I stood, wrapped her legs around me, and headed to her bedroom. Just because I wasn't planning to stay tonight didn't mean that I couldn't make her come a few more times before I tucked her in the bed and went home, jacked off to the memory of how fucking amazing she was. Okay. As I laid her on the bed, she reached out and flipped the switch. The lamp on the bedside table illuminated the room with a soft glow. She unwrapped her legs from around my waist and her smile turned sultry. I knew she could read my mind. The thought was confirmed when she said, "You want to see it, don't you?" Fuck yeah, are you joking? She bit her lips, whether out of shyness or because she was trying to keep herself from laughing at me. I didn't know. I didn't care. I was barely restraining myself from ripping her pants off. I've never quite had this experience before. Oh, well then. She looked down meaningfully and reached for the buttons of her pants. I brushed her hands away and unbuttoned and unzipped them myself. When she lifted her hips, I peeled them down her legs. Laid out on the bed, she looked like a goddamn fantasy come to life. Her legs pale and unmarked, her arms covered in works of art, the glittering gold tipping the pink nipple of her fantastic rack, her wild red, purple, black waves spilling across the quilt. I paused to appreciate the sight. I was even more dumbstruck than I had been the night she stripped by the pool, because tonight I had enough light to see everything I missed then. She was more than a fucking goddess. You're so damn beautiful. There aren't words. I don't need words, just you. I knelt and hooked my finger in her panties and slid them down, unveiling the rest of her, inch by inch. Once I dropped the black lace to the floor, I bent to drag my tongue along her slit until I bumped her hood piercing. It was gold, matching her nipple rings, and it was the hottest fucking thing I ever seen. I tongued it, flicked it against her clit, and she writhed on the bed, her fingers gripping my hair and tugging. Holy Simon, don't stop. Her words were breathly, and my dick pulsed in my jeans. I ignored my hard-on and continued devouring the sweetness I've ever tasted. Jesus Christ, this woman will own me. She bucked against my mouth and I flicked her piercing again. When she screamed my name, I'm pretty sure everyone in a 4-block radius heard it. I fucking loved it. Her hips jerked and she sank deeper into the mattress, pulling away from my mouth. She pushed my head away and I looked up at her. Her features were languid, sedated. I wanted to make her look like that every day for the rest of my life. The thought slammed into me with the subtlety of a 2x4 to the face. I knew I wanted to see where this could go between us, but I hadn't stopped to consider exactly what that could mean. As she reclined against the bed, I considered what I knew about her. She had attitude and ink and spades and constantly kept me guessing. I knew her name, where she worked, where she lived, that she had only a few friends, and she loved her dog. That was the sum total of my factual knowledge of Charlie Stone. Oh. Before I let myself get any deeper into whatever this was becoming, I needed to know more. Dun, 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 dun. She popped herself upon her elbows, eyes raking over me. Are you going to let me return the favor? All coherent thoughts fled my brain except for, hell yes. That, chapter 17, Charlie. I locked the door behind Simon and sagged against the wood. Sweet baby Jesus. The man had rocked my world, both in bed and out. Because of him, I was going to potentially put my safe and anonymous existence at risk. I crossed into my bedroom and punched in the code to the small hotel-type safe bolted into my closet. Harriet's last tenant had left it behind, and I used it to hoard my cash and the reminders of my past. My license, passport, and old credit cards were stacked inside. It was strange to see my real name again. Only Harriet knew it, and I was confident she never revealed my secret. I stopped thinking of myself as Charlotte Augustin about 3 months after I left Manhattan. By that time, I embraced my new identity. All it took was 1,300 miles and a fake name to finally discover the real me. Under the false button built into the safe, there was a nondescript composition book. It was deceiving in its simplicity, but the pages were filled with a gibberish mess of letters and numbers. It was the one thing of my father's I had taken from the penthouse, although I probably shouldn't have. But I run across it by chance and taken it as a sign. I didn't know what it contained, but I did know that my father wouldn't go to the trouble to encode something unless it was pretty damn important. It was my insurance policy. Although it could just as easily be my ticket to facing an obstruction of justice charge. Either way, I knew that my disappearance wouldn't go over well, and there was a chance that the Department of Justice might still decide I belonged in prison with my father. If that happened, information would be my only bargaining chip. I just didn't know what kind of information I had. I hadn't touched a book since the day I stashed it in the safe, and I didn't want to be touching it now. It was an irrational fear that my father's evil would somehow seep under my skin if I handled his dirty secrets. Honestly, I plan to do nothing with it unless, and until I needed to, use it as a defense weapon. But Simon had unknowingly convinced me to be proactive. I said he was going to. The only way I ever be able to stop looking over my shoulder was to find the money. The FBI had all the computer servers, files, and records from Augustin's investment, and with all that information and the resources at their disposal, I assumed they would have found something by now. Tens of thousands of people were counting on them, but nothing in the news mentioned even $1 being located. If I could decipher the notebook and it actually contained information that would prove useful in the search, I could feed the feds anonymous tips while retaining my ace in the hole. Once all the money had been recovered, I could emerge from hiding on my own terms. It was an idealistic plan, but it might be my only shot at exploring something real with Simon. That was, if Simon could stand to be near me after he knew the truth. My hopes deflated at the thought, but I wouldn't let it deter me. It was a long shot on both fronts, but it was the only shot I had, so I'd take it. I thought about tonight. Simon was like anyone I ever met before. He seemed to just want me, for me. That was a novel experience. As the daughter of a billionaire, I'd always questioned people's motive for befriending me. As a child, parents had encouraged their kids to get close to me in order to be invited into my parents' social circle. Imagine being 14 years old and being grilled for investment advice by a friend's dad. Seriously? I know, poor little rich girl syndrome. But you could never know what someone else's life was like until you walk that metaphorical mile in her designer pumps. Pre-scandal, Charlotte would have been the perfect match for someone like Simon. Well-bred, poised, not to mention wealthy and well-connected. but he seemed like the simple, rough around the edge, poor loner version of me, just fine. His political ambitions and upcoming campaign were the biggest wild cards right now. He never discussed them to me. Would Simon still want to be with me when I refused to accompany him to fundraisers and public events? Or would he grow frustrated and lose interest? At this point, there was nothing to do but wait and see. The most startling realization was that I wanted to find some way to fit into his life. I flipped open the notebook and delved into the willy depths of my father's twisted mind. I stared at the words, letters, and numbers for hours, hoping a pattern would emerge. It was his own shorthand encrypt with some sort of code, that much was clear. But without the key to cipher, I could stare at it for years and never break it. The boldly scrawled numbers and letters were blurring together when I flipped the book shut hours later. The sun was already shining through my skylight, and I was no closer to figuring it out than I had been when I started. The book went back into the safe, and I took a quick shower before dressing and heading out for coffee and my Saturday morning. Bingnut. I had to be at the Dirty Dog by 9 to help Ev sort through a new shipment of inventory she brought online. I opted to leave my bike at home and walk up Daphne to St. Philip's and my favorite cafe. A hot spot frequented by locals more than tourists, it was already jam-packed with the early crowd. While I waited in line, I noticed the New York Times on one of the tables. The headline snagged my attention. Money trail colder than ever. More than 1 year after his devastating fraud was uncovered, sources say federal authorities are no closer to locating the billions stolen by Alistair Augustin. Victims are demanding progress, and those demands have been met with silence. The article went on to detail the arrest, the trial, my father's 175-year sentence, my mother's activities, and then Charlotte Augustin, only child of Alistair and Lisette Augustin, had been in seclusion in an undisclosed location since giving her testimony just over 1 year ago. Sources indicated that while she's not thought to be complicit in her father's scheme, she's considered a person of interest by the FBI, which has been unable to locate her for further questioning. When asked, Lisette Augustin denied having any knowledge about where her daughter was currently living. Anyone with information concerning the whereabouts of Charlotte Augustin is asked to contact the FBI. Oh, at the bottom of the page was a picture of me. Oh, well, the old one. I looked around to make certain no one was watching as I folded that section of the paper and stuffed it in my bag. It wasn't like I could hide all the copies, but why leave it where someone might make the connection? The line was barely moving, so I picked up the local paper that was tucked under the New York Times and flipped through to find the entertainment section. It'd been a while since I'd been to a good show, and I wanted to see who was coming to town. I froze when I saw Simon's face staring up from the society section. He was once again dressed in black tie, but this time his arm was wrapped around a gorgeous blonde in a sleek gray designer gown. She was tucked in close to his side, hand pressing against his chest. I read the headlines. Nola's favorite son shines at charity gala. My eyes flicked to the date of the paper. Today I forgot about the line and dropped into a chair. Last evening, New Orleans leading citizen gathering at a gala to raise funds for the final stage of construction of the Art Museum expansion. All eyes were on Simon Dutchison and his lovely companion, Miss Vanessa Frost, as it is rumored that he is preparing to launch his campaign for the United States House of Representatives in hopes of ousting incompetent Robert Carter and reclaiming a seat his father held for 16 years before his unsuccessful run at the governor's mansion. I skimmed the rest of the article and the words blurred when I saw the same speculation that a marriage proposal was expected to be forthcoming prior to Simon's hitting the campaign trail. When I dropped the paper, my sweaty hands were smeared with gray ink from the newsprint. My churning stomach rebelled at the thought of food. A cold detachment settled over me as I realized Simon was apparently a very busy man. Somehow, between taking me out for dinner and picking me up for work, he managed to squeeze in a charity event with his, whatever she was. His girlfriend? No, girl, you're his girlfriend. He already claimed you. I mentally ticked off his schedule for the evening. Dinner with me, gala with her. Then orgasm with me before calling it a night. Fucking overachiever. Hot anger burned through the detachment when I recalled my thoughts from the wee hours of the morning about how I wanted to try to find a way to fit into his life and about how Simon's honesty had inspired me to find a way to unbury the secrets I've been hiding. I didn't care that my reaction was hypocritical. My reasons for hiding the truth from Simon was to preserve the life I built in New Orleans. His was what? The quick fuck he claimed not to want? What a joke. He was just as bad as any of the people who used me before, except this time I wasn't being used for financial gain. I was just a toy to be played with when it was convenient for him. Khan's harsh words from last night came back to me. You're worth way more than being some politician's side piece. Khan knew, and he tried to tell me, but I wouldn't listen. I didn't know why I was so shocked. Ev had mentioned the speculation about their relationship in the online gossip columns, except dumbass me had assumed it was just that, speculation, because a good guy like Simon wouldn't keep a lady for his public persona and a tatted up bad girl on the side, right? I laughed humorlessly. That's what I get for making assumptions. Again, maybe I wasn't being fair. Because even if he asked me to go to an event like last night's gala, I would have turned him down cold. There was no way I could brave the cameras to stand by his side. Someone would figure it out. My anonymity, there go that word again, would evaporate, and then the FBI would swoop in. But he didn't ask me. He hadn't even mentioned it. So fuck being fair. I walked out the cafe without getting coffee or my damn vignette. That's the end of chapter 17. Now, Charlie, you know you wrong, right? You is all the way wrong. So I feel like she's trying to find any excuse to not tell Simon what about her. I think that she's backpedaling because she saw the article. At first, she was gung-ho about, doing what she needed to do to let him know what's up. But now she saw this little bit of get out of the situation and she just took it and ran with it. Baby. You're going to have to put your big girl panties on and you're going to have to do what it need to do. All right? So you better not be playing with Simon. But he ain't gonna go down easy, just know. Okay, so that's my thoughts on this chapter. I don't have any words that I didn't know the definition of or had a hard time pronouncing. I knew the word, I just in my brain tongue twister for me. So yeah, so that's all I got for this chapter. I'll see you in the next chapter. See you in chapter 18. Bye.